Okay. I'm sitting here now with Mr. Avraham Greenberg. Excuse me. You see, I have a chance now to go over to Mr. Avraham Greenbaum, and this is part of the She'erit HaPleita project in the British zone of Germany. Mr. Greenbaum, for the record, I'd like to start asking you some biographical and background information. Can we start, for example, what is your what is your occupation currently?
At present, I'm the senior advisor to the president of Bar-Ilan University.
And your date of birth?
My date of birth was the 2nd of November, 1922.
And the country of birth?
England.
England. Okay. And what kind of education did you receive as a child, as a youth growing up in England?
There weren't too many Jewish schools at that time. In fact, I can only recall one, the Jewish Free School. And I'm from a religious family. The type of education most of my generation had, my contemporaries certainly, was to go to a public school, and in the afternoon or the evening to go to a cheder, or to go to a yeshiva, to the yeshiva. There was a yeshiva Chaim in London, and that was the education that I received. I went to an elementary school. I got a scholarship to what was called a secondary school, which was mainly, well, not mainly, but there were many Jewish boys at the school. It wasn't a Jewish school at all, but there were many Jewish boys. I took my matric, and then I went to another school where I took what was called the Inter, Latin and other subjects that they didn't do in the other school. And then I went to Jews College, which was a rabbinical seminary. I took my degree there, but I did not want to continue to study there. I didn't want to go into the rabbinic. Instead, I went onto a Hachshava of Bachad in preparation for Aliyah, eventual Aliyah to Israel.
You said you took your degree. I assume your BA.
I took my BA.
In Jewish?
I took my BA in Hebrew and Aramaic, Semitic languages.
Mm-hmm. And your home, was it a Zionist home?
It's very difficult to define things like that. My home was a very religious home, and because it was a religious home, Palestine, Eretz Israel played a significant role. You didn't try to define things to say I'm a Zionist. My father never said that he was a Zionist, but he, as a religious Jew, he prayed 3 times a day for Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel was part of your existence. You were conscious of it all the time. And so were my parents. For example, on Tu B'Shvat, we would have special fruits that you had in Israel, especially boxer. I remember as a child. There was no attempt of defining things at that time. As I grew up, of course, and I joined the youth movements, then it became something different. But my parents were never. They didn't belong to any particular party. They didn't belong to the Mizrahi or to any other Zionist party. They were religious Jews who cared about Eretz Israel.
So you eventually joined a Zionist youth movement. Was that?
I was first, as many people in my generation, a member of Habonim in England, which at that time was the largest youth movement, and it was made up of both religious and non-religious people, young people. Later, because of the influence of the Mapai movement, the Habonim became a sort of left-wing Mapai youth movement, and then religious young people left and joined. First, there was an organization called the Young Israel. Young Sinai, and eventually we ended up in Bachad, which was a movement created by the German refugees who came over at that time. And I joined that group very quickly, soon after it was established. A very charismatic man at that time by the name of Aryeh Hendler, who was the leader of the Bachad movement. And quite a lot of natives, so to speak, English-born young people joined the movement. Later we founded Bnei Akiva. That was the direction in which we went. As soon as I left college, I joined, as I said, the Hachshara. I was in charge of the Hachsharat Noar at Thaxted, which was then the principal Hachshara in England. And we were waiting for an opportunity to go to Palestine.
And that was, what years are we talking about now?
We're talking about 44, 45. And it was then that when the camps were about to be opened, they created in England a group called the Jewish Relief Unit. And one of the people, you saw the name Leonard here.
Yes.
It was Leonard Cohen was the man who headed this at one time. He wasn't a religious Jew. He wasn't a very conscious Jew. He was a humanitarian, and he felt that things needed to be done. And so this group of young volunteers began to be organized. And a lot of people in the youth movements in Habonim then, and certainly in Bahad joined this. And we went on certain training courses.
When did you first come in contact? You must have come in contact with Shalom Markovich. Did you come in contact with him?
Well, I was at college, Jewish college. Shalom Markovich was a personal friend for many, many years. And we were at college together also. And then he went to Germany just a little before I did. I was waiting together with Stanley Abramovich, a personal friend we went together to Germany, but he was sent to the American zone, and I was sent to the British zone. He's today, he was for many, many years connected with the Joint, and he's today the education officer of the Joint. He stayed with the Joint all these years.
What was your personal motivation to go to Germany? Did your background was either Eastern European or German? What was your family?
Both my parents came from Galicia, from Poland, and like most people, the shock of what we knew was happening in Poland, and the fact that we were helpless, we couldn't do anything, and here was a chance to do something with the DPs. I spoke Yiddish. I had no problem with Yiddish, and that was prerequisite. And in fact, at the training courses that we had, I took a leading part in the exercises that we had in interviewing people in Yiddish and so on. This was one of the problems of many of the people who went abroad, that they didn't speak the language and spoke English, and somebody coming from Poland, from concentration camp, without knowledge of English, those who came with the best will in the world, they couldn't communicate with them. So the fact that number one, we were terribly shocked by everything that was happening. Number two, the feeling that maybe at last we could do something, we were so helpless. Thirdly, the feeling that because I spoke Yiddish, I could be of some use. Also, as most of us, we all had fun. My whole family was in Poland. And the hope that maybe by fluke we could find somebody, and as a matter of fact, that day they found quite a number of people, 2 people, 2 cousins.
Did you look for them, or did you find them accidentally? Did you?
Complete accident. One of them was Rabbi Avraham ben Yeshaya. I don't know whether you know Goldfinger. His name is mentioned. Do you know the book Belson? Have you got the book Belson?
Yes.
His name is mentioned there many times. He was a chaplain in the Polish army, and was captured. He lived in Paris, and when war broke out, he volunteered, became a chaplain in the Polish army, and as I say, he was a prisoner of war. Strange thing happened to me. These coincidences are just extraordinary. When I first came to Germany, I'm jumping the gun a bit.
It's okay. We'll go back.
Yeah, when I first came to Germany, I remember it was a Thursday, and I was billeted in the officers' mess, as they called it, the officers' quarters. And the man came when I was introduced as Avraham Greenbaum, and said, "Strange thing, a goy, non-Jew, said to me, the strange thing, there was a man here this week who asked if we knew somebody Greenbaum in England. And it's an extraordinary thing. Like, how can we know somebody? He was non-Jewish. He said, and even if I knew who knew whether it would be the same person or not. I said, where is this man? What was his name? He said, I don't know. Anyhow, on the Shabbat, I walked from my billet to the camp, which was outside. On Friday, already on Thursday, I was at the camp. But on Shabbat I was walking, it was right outside.
Which camp is this? Deepholz.
I was walking towards the camp, and parallel to me, but on the other side of the road, I saw somebody walking exactly the same direction. I looked across the street, couldn't see his face properly. It was quite a wide road. And then as the road narrowed, I somehow managed to see his face. He looked Jewish to me. And I said to myself, what can I do? So I went across the street, and I saw a man with the Shnei Luchot, in a strange uniform, which I realized later was a Polish uniform. And we said good Shabbos to each other, began to walk, and he said to me, "Wie heißt ihr, wer seid ihr?" And I said, "My name is Avraham Greenbaum." He stopped dead, and he said to me, "What's your mother's name?" I said, "My mother is Michale." And I saw him, he went white, and he said to me, my name is Avraham, like yours. And Goldfinger, I knew immediately. And he said, I'm your cousin, my first cousin. And what happened was that, like so many people who went abroad at that time, the house was flooded by people. As soon as it became known in my shchuna, in my area, that I was going abroad, people came with lists. Maybe you could find this one. And when my mother saw what was happening, she said, "So take down our family too." And the first one on the list was her brother. She had several brothers. And,
so you both, Avraham, named after the same?
After the father, after his mother, his father and my mother were brothers and sisters, That was one case that I had. As I say, I'm jumping the gun, but you asked that question.
It's all right.
I don't know if you want to go in any chronological order.
It's fine.
Much later, in Bergen-Belsen, there was a period when Polish Jews were allowed out of Russia. And I'm sure you've come across that period. And they, thousands upon thousands, suddenly appeared and were whisked away the next morning. And we knew that in Bergen-Belsen was one area where they stayed. We tried to keep people away from that. We didn't want anybody to know what was happening with them, where they were going, and so on. And I was walking past a barrack in which they all knew that there were people who were coming in transit from Russia. And somebody said to me, quickly, come in, there's a big fight going on here. And I was in uniform, an officer's uniform, and which commanded some sort of respect. I was a young schmuck, I was 24 years old. It's ridiculous today to think of these things. And I came into the building, and I saw there was a fight going on. And they said, "Tut up this, try to do something." I pulled the two people apart and I said, "What's going on here? Isn't it enough that we went through all of this? You suffered so much, now you're fighting among themselves." And I heard an extraordinary story. Apparently one of the people, I can't remember which of them it was, had a Sefer Torah and was about to be deported, and handed the Sefer Torah over to the other. And said to him, "If God will help me and I'll stay alive, I want you to give me the Sefer back." Apparently he said yes. The other man had gone through again, through Russia, through the Urals, Siberia and so on, kept this Sefer with him all the time. And now we met by chance. And he said, "Give me back my Sefer." And he said, "No, I'm not going to give it to you. I was sure that you were killed. I took the Sefer with me, I guarded it with my life, And now I believe it belongs to me. To cut a long story short, I don't know what happened to the Sefer. I do know when I began to ask their names, one of them said his name was Banknap, which is my family name, and he was a cousin. And I've never seen him again. I tried to contact him. Next morning he wasn't there anymore. We lost contact completely. I don't know where he is.
I'd like to go back a little bit. What kind of orientation did you get to prepare you for what you're going to meet in Germany? Did you know? Did you have any idea what?
Not really. All we knew was that these were survivors with many problems, and that our help was mainly to help them any way that we possibly could, to lend a sympathetic ear, to help them if possible make contact.
Do you like a drink? Did you offer a drink?
No, thank you. I'm okay. Thank you.
Now you've been recorded. You should know.
It's okay. It's okay.
You.
We'll have the recorder on. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right.
You want a drink?
Maybe later. You were sent by which organization?
Now, let me explain.
Because there's a little bit of a question mark in terms of the Jewish relief. Yeah, I'd like to explain, please.
To you exactly what happened. As I say, I joined the Jewish Relief Unit. At that time, I was on Harshara in Flagstead. And one afternoon, I had a call from Aryeh Hendler, his name I mentioned to you before. And he said to me that, I know you're a member of the Jewish Relief Unit, but nobody knows how long it's going to be before you get across. We were all straining at the leash, we all wanted to go. And it took some time. The camps were opened, as you know, certainly the British on the 15th of April. We were already at the beginning of June, and we still hadn't gone. And we were all, as I say, we were very anxious to go. And he said, if you're prepared to go by the end of this week, I can arrange for you to go. I said, why? What has happened? And he told me that Rabbi Hertz, Dr. Hertz, who was the chief rabbi of England, had managed to obtain 4 places for chaplains from Field Marshal Montgomery, who was the head of the British Army at the time, and that they found 3. I think it was a disgrace. There were only 3 rabbis at that time who were prepared to volunteer and to go abroad, to go to the camps.
Although the people in your movement, there were more people who, it seemed that those who your friends and the circle of people you were with.
No, let me explain.
Yeah.
They had to be rabbis.
Oh, they had to be rabbis. So therefore.
Because each one of them had a specific job to do. And they could not find more than 3 rabbis. And he said, there's one more place. He said, you were at Jewish college. I put in your name, you would be acceptable. If you want to go, then we can arrange for you to go. And I said, fine. I said, I still recall, I said, I'll have to call my mother and ask what she feels, well, my parents. And he said, okay. I called my mother. My father wasn't too well at the time. My mother said, if I were younger, I would also go. So there was no problem. And at the end of the week, I was in Germany. The group that I was connected with, in other words, under whose auspices I went, I've tried to find the letter. I've got the letters. I've got 2 letters. One from the chief rabbi, from Hertz. I think it was to Montgomery. And there's another one which I will find. If it's necessary, I can find. They're actually interesting documents in which he introduces me to Montgomery and says that I'm going on abroad. I'm going on a mission of welfare and religion, whatever. I can't remember the terms, and that Montgomery should help us in any way that he can. And that was an organization which had been established by the son-in-law of the Chief Rabbi Hertz, who was Dr. Schoenfeld, whose name must be very well known to you. He established a group called the Chief Rabbi's Religious Emergency Council, and its primary object was, as it said, to deal with the religious aspect. In other words, to send over talesim, tefillin, chumoshim, sidurim, to care for shochtim, to care for kashrut. And in fact, of the 4 people who went, one of them, Rabbi Shlomo Baumgarten was a moil, and his duty was to carry out Milah for, there were thousands of people who had not had an opportunity.
So this emergency council had basically 4 emissaries.
There were 4 emissaries.
And the rest of the staff was home office. They basically dealt with the requests and all the problems.
In
England.
In England, well, I'm not quite sure. They may have had other people who went to other parts of the world. For example, many of them went to Poland and helped bring out children, and to Czechoslovakia and to bring out children. I don't know that aspect. I don't know. I was one of the 4. The 4 were, as I say, Rabbi Shlomo Baumgarten. There was Dr. Munk, Rabbi Dr. Munk. Eli Munk. There was a man by the name of Levinsky, who was a rabbi from Manchester, and there was myself.
What were the tasks of each one of you?
Well, Rabbi Munk was stationed mainly in Celle, which was not too far from Bergen-Belsen, and he dealt with problems of halakha. There were, of course, very many.
Could you give me an example of the kind of problems he had?
Very simple. When a man would come, and especially women, not so much men as the women, that she knows that her husband has died and she wants to get married again. There was a problem of the witnesses. So, and there were terrible tragedies. I've witnessed to a number of them that I don't even want to talk about. But everything that had to do with time of tragedy and that caused problems, personal problems, he was there to give us advice. Not only he, but also Baumgarten was a great scholar. Zelensky was also stationed in Bergen-Belsen. Again, it's a chapter I don't want to talk very much about. He was sent home very quickly. Okay, let's leave it at that.
Okay, so what was? Could I ask you what his task was?
His task also, there were thousands, there were tens of thousands of people there.
So you're talking also they were responsible for various geographic areas in addition to having specific tasks, or did it overlap?
No, it overlapped. For example, when there was a wedding in Hamburg, then Rabbi Munk would come to Hamburg. If there was something, we were responsible for the whole of the British zone, anything that happened in the British zone.
Baumgarten's responsibilities were.
He was a rabbi. He was a great scholar, but he helped with shchita. He helped with milah. I would imagine that he must have, although I don't know for sure, he must have trained moalim or organized other moalim. He was a very, very quiet man, nechbai lakilim, a great scholar, a very, very wonderful type of Jew with all sorts of marvelous midot. Rabbi Munk was a much more cultured, much more European type of man. He was originally from Berlin. He was the rabbi of a big synagogue in London, much more worldly type of man also, completely different personality. And he was mainly in Celle, where there was also a lady whom you must have heard about, Mrs. Henriquez, name you must have. They didn't get on too well, but anyhow.
All of what, when Munk's name comes up, it always comes up with a lot of praise. Was there anything, was he a very special individual in addition to the things he did? Because everything that had been written about him in various reports were quite positive.
I think that there wasn't anybody in Germany who knew this man who could say anything negative about him. He was a German, Yekkish Jew, but with all of the most positive elements of what that means and that indicates. Straight as a die. A word was a word. Time meant time. There wasn't any, he never disappointed anybody, and he was really a very wonderful man.
How did he get on with the Eastern European Jews?
That was a bit of a problem, but I think that they began to. They certainly appreciated him. He wasn't the pastoral type of rabbi. If you had a problem, you came to him, and he would deal with the problem. A very special type, and there's not a bad word that anybody could possibly say about him. The same with regard to Rabbi Baumgarten, who was a different cup of tea, as we always did. But he.
Were any of the rabbis associated with Agudat Yisrael?
Yes, and Baumgarten was always Agudat Yisrael, and so was Eli Munk. Levinsky, to all intents and purposes, let's ignore.
Okay, fine. We can skip over
Not
Levinsky.
important. He went back shortly, not under the best of. But anyhow, let's leave that.
Fine. In terms of their affiliation with Agudat Yisrael, did that affect the, let's say, the party line, or?
Well, it affected me greatly. I was known as a Mizrahi.
We didn't get to you. What was your task officially?
My official task was, I suppose today, in terms of, well, let's put it this way. If we would try to define it today, it would be very difficult to determine. I was supposed to do everything.
Okay.
I had to do with hospitals. I was my work was mainly both social work within the camp, and then if there were any problems with the military, that's where I.
How did you differ from, let's say, a regular relief unit worker?
Because the regular relief unit worker had a specific job. There were those who worked in the hospital. There were those who worked in the schools. I worked in the hospital and I worked in the schools, and I was all over. I didn't have any particular function in any particular institution. In fact, I could choose my own field of activity in whatever I wanted to do.
How did what you did differ, for example, from Shalom Markovich? Because I understand it seemed to be very similar.
I wasn't there when Shalom Markovich was in the camp. He had already left the camp by the time I came to Bergen-Belsen.
Oh,
I didn't come immediately to Bergen-Belsen.
I understand.
They were sent to Celle, as I told you. Rabbi Munk was sent to Celle. Levinsky and Baumgarten were sent to Bergen-Belsen, and I was sent to Diepholz. So that was where I first went. When problems came up, I was approached and asked to deal with the military authorities. Since I was, so to speak, I was attached. In fact, as you saw from the, I just realized that if you saw from the here,
I have a copy myself.
I was attached to military government of the BLA, of the British forces. And that gave me a standing with the military, which the other members of the relief unit certainly didn't have.
What kind of uniform did you wear?
I had a British Army uniform. I didn't have any. I had an officer's uniform. Here it's a Chief Rabbi's Emergency Council, but it was an officer's uniform to.
Just like the Jewish Relief Unit.
No, they did. In fact, I could show you. I've got photos of.
How is that different?
How was it different? I had a different hat. I had an officer's hat.
I see.
I had a different uniform. They had the ordinary tunic and trousers. I had a proper officer's officer's uniform. If I could give, and I'll try to, I'm not in any way organized.
No, it's okay, because it happens that one thing reminds you of something else. But
you asked a very interesting question about politics in the camp. There was politics in the camp, and there was a clash, of course, especially between the Aguda and the Mizrahi. I was part of the Mizrahi movement, and I was part of the Mizrahi movement in England, but there I supported the Bachad. We established the Bachad, and we had a special barrack. We built a special barrack for them.
We're talking now Bergen-Belsen.
Yes, Bergen-Belsen. Again, I'm jumping.
It's okay. No, I'm just asking for the record.
Yes, we're talking about Bergen-Belsen, and they conducted their lives, their synagogue, and everything according to
just chronologically, what period of time are we talking about?
We're talking about after, I'll tell you what time we're talking about. We are talking now at the end of, we're talking the end of 1946 and the whole of 1947, because at that time, at the times I've mentioned now, I was transferred to Bergen-Belsen.
You were in, the period you were in Germany was basically from, I think, September?
I came to Germany in June of 1945. And I was in Germany from June 1945 until December 1946. At first I was in Diepholz, and it was later when Diepholz was dissolved that I went to Hamburg, and I took sick in Hamburg. I got hepatitis. I was taken to Hanover to hospital. Was sent to England. They couldn't treat me. I had a very severe attack of infectious hepatitis. I was sent to England, and when I recovered, I came back. And when I came back, I was stationed in Bergen-Belsen.
Oh, I see.
So that's the chronology.
And you finished your tour of duty basically at the end of 1946.
I finished my tour at the end of 1946 for a very selfish reason. I met my wife in Bergen-Belsen, and we decided to get married, and we couldn't get married in Germany, otherwise we probably stayed on in Germany. So we went to, I got permission for her suddenly. There was an opening, and they allowed British personnel who wanted to get married to take their spouse, their future spouse, out of the country literally on a special piece of paper, just which simply said that so-and-so, Masha Ralski, has permission to visit England from such and for 1 month. If during that period, the wedding, I would marry her, then she could stay. If not, she would have to go back to...
It seems a little odd that you'd have to take your future wife out of the country in order to marry her. Why couldn't you marry
because
in Germany?
there was no way in which a member of the British forces or British personnel was allowed to marry a DP. It was completely
on the books.
forbidden.
It was a law. Yeah.
It was forbidden. There was a law against what was the word? Oh, there's a word that was bandied around all the time. Fraternization. And this was also considered fraternization. So that was the only way in which we could get married. So we left Germany.
Okay, let's get back. I'm trying to think of where we left off.
Okay. So I was connected with the Mizrahi movement.
Okay. Were you seen as a Mizrahi person?
I was considered as a Mizrahi person. In fact, the next year when they had elections to the Zionist Congress, they put me forward as a candidate of the Mizrahi to the Congress.
Was there any conflict of interest or any problems with that?
No, not at all. Not at all. There especially wasn't a conflict of interest because at the beginning we were not supposed to show any favor to any particular party that we were connected with, and in general one did not. And I'll tell you a story in a moment that will cover, will explain to you a number of things. And but it worked out. It worked out that way, and it was accepted, and there was no conflict. Rabbi Baumgarten, Rabbi Monk were mainly concerned with the Aguda. And for a simple reason, the Aguda people felt much more comfortable with them and would go to them. The Mizrahi type people would come to me. But let me give you an example of the conflict that there was there between the two organizations, and which will give you some idea of the type of work that I was engaged in. There was a rabbi in Bergen-Belsen who was a well-known rabbi from Hungary, a famous Talmudic scholar by the name of Rabbi Meisels, Eliyahu Meisels. Was it Eliyahu? No, I can't remember. Rabbi Meisels. Rabbi Meisels was an extreme, today you would call him an extreme Haredi. And he cared only for his Hasidim and for the people who were around him, and they were mainly the Aguda crowd.
He was a survivor.
He was a survivor. He was called the Weizsäcker Dayan. He was a Dayan in a small town near Budapest called Weizen. And when he came, he was revered. He was a great scholar, a tremendous respect for him. He suspected that because I was connected with the Mizrahi movement, that I favored them by giving them more supplies than I would give to his people. It wasn't true, but that's the way he perceived it. And what supplies? What were the main supplies? The main supplies were cigarettes and clothes, which we would distribute. This was also something I was connected with. And
where did the supplies come from?
The supplies came from England, from the Chief Rabbi's Emergency Council, mainly.
Not from the Jewish Relief Unit?
The Jewish Relief Unit had different supplies. They had clothing that was sent, and I'll explain to you in a moment why the cigarettes. I'm sure you know. The Chief Rabbi's Council would send Sidurim, Chumoshim, Talesim, Tfilin, Sifrei Torah, and cigarettes. Now, the main use to which the cigarettes were put was to give them to future brides who would use them to provide for a dowry and for whatever it took to make a Jewish wedding. Obviously, this was against the law. It was black market, and there was a price for a carton of cigarettes. You know exactly what you could get for it, but that was the only way in which we could help them. There wasn't the money that we could give them, so we would get these cigarettes, all sorts of quarters, doesn't matter, not important at this moment, and we would distribute them. Now, cigarettes were of course a currency in Germany at that time, and I had an office and I had a little storeroom, and once somebody broke into my storeroom and stole the whole supply of cigarettes that I had. It was a terrible, terrible blow. Rabbi Meisel suspected me of having distributed these cigarettes to the Mizrahi, and it was a calumny. But that's what he thought. He couldn't imagine that somebody stole it. I took them, I gave them to the Mizrahi, and he was very antagonistic to me. I can understand it. As I say, I was a young man. I wasn't a qualified rabbi. He was it's like, I don't know if it's like a boy of 22, of 24, and I was 24, a boy of Ezra or Bnei Akiva would go to Harav Auerbach or Rav Eliashav and would sit and discuss with him. I mean, who the hell do you think you are? And especially when he felt that he had a reason and a cause to be angry with me. So that's the background of the story I want to tell you now. I was sitting in my office on a Friday morning, and Rabbi Meisel suddenly appeared in my office. Now this is as if we are sitting here now, and who should I say, Weizmann, Leser Weizmann comes into my house here. I was almost in shock. I didn't understand what had happened. He had a car, he had a driver, drew up outside my office, came into my office, and he sat down and he said to me, Greenbaum, I need your help. Well, I was very flattered. I didn't know how I could help him. And of course, whatever I could possibly do, I would do. And he told me a story. He said that the British police, the military police, as they often did, searched a barrack, and they found a supply of cigarettes in the room of a girl who was about to know another girl, and they arrested her and they sent her off to Fallingbostel, which was a Polish army prison. Very bad reputation, mainly Polish prostitutes and all sorts of criminal types. And she was in the camp, and he wanted me to try and get her out. I asked him for the background, and he told me that she was about to get married, and he gave her the cigarettes, and she was caught. I took the detail, and then he said to me, I want you to help me, and I know that if you If you want to, you can do it, and so Gott help. I didn't know what to do at first. I sat down and I thought, and then I decided that I'm going to use this letter that I had from General Montgomery, and I took my driver and went to Celle, where the commanding officer of the area was. I asked for an interview. I put on my dog's collar, which I always used for these occasions, and there was no problem. He immediately asked me to come in.
To the outside world, you could have been a rabbi, I imagine.
I couldn't. Yeah, I was called. I was a padre. You know, in the army, this opens every door. And I went to see him, and I sat and I told him the whole story. I told him the truth. I said, this and this has happened. The girl received the cigarettes not to use them on the black market, to deal with them on the black market, but she was getting married. It was the only money, the only help that they could give her. She was caught and she was sent away to this prison. This is a girl who is very different from the girls who are in the prison. She must be suffering terribly there, and I would like him to give an order to release her.
This is a very religious girl, I assume.
Of course, of course. If you imagine the tragedy of being in a place like that. So he said to me, but this is very unusual. This is she was doing things that she was not supposed to do. It's illegal, black market. I said, maybe it is, but you must understand the circumstances. So he said, if you will promise that this girl will no longer be involved in things like this, I'll see what I can do. So he said, I'll give an order. I said, today is Friday, and it would be the most horrible thing to allow that girl to be in that camp over the Sabbath, over Shabbat. And I'd like to please ask you to, whatever you want to do now. He was a very understanding British gentleman in the best sense of the word. Sat down, gave an order, written order, which he gave me. I had the details of the girl, her name and everything about her. And he said, okay, now it's up to you. I went straight from Celle to Falling-Gostel. It was Friday. It was a short day. By the time I got there, it was already very close to Shabbat, and it didn't bother me at all. I knew that Pidyon Shuim is one of the most important mitzvahs, certainly in a case like this. I found the man who was in charge of the prison. I presented it to him. He made no objection, but he said, you'll have to find a certain officer, a woman who is in charge of that particular session. It took us a long time to find her. She was from a party or whatever. She grumbled, but we found her, and she came, and she brought out this girl, and she said, you're free to go. It was already Shabbat, quite late in Shabbat. This girl refused to go. Didn't want to go. I literally forced her into the car, and she wept the whole way. It was a long way from Falling-Gostel to Bergen-Belsen. We drove to Bergen-Belsen at the outskirts of the camp, just outside the gate, stopped the car. I took her, walked her home, and that was that. Sunday morning, Rabbi Meisel appeared outside my office again. He came in, simply thanked me, and walked out again. It didn't stop his antagonism to me, but at that particular moment, I think that he felt that I had done what was right and what was acceptable.
I wonder whether he thought perhaps that he might have questioned his suspicions about...
No, I don't think so. What he did say was, Yihi chelki imach. So, all right, why did I tell you this story? Number one, it illustrates the antagonism that there was. Number two, it gives you some idea of the problems that we had to encounter. And number three, it gives you an inkling of the type of work that I was able to do because of the position that I held and that I was in.
Was the arrival of the shlichim from Eretz Israel, did they affect the change of mood or?
Oh, absolutely.
In what way? In terms of there are various ways, but one thing I'm thinking particularly in terms of making things much more party oriented.
That's certainly.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly.
Is there anything you could elaborate on that?
Well, you probably know that the shlichim who came, there were two types of shlichim. There were party shlichim, and there were the Shlichim of the Jewish Brigade. The Jewish Brigade did not really concern itself with party politics. They organized they helped organize the schools.
They were also earlier. They came.
They were earlier. They helped organize the schools. They organized the sport activity. They organized other activity that is best left unsaid at the moment. Their task was to prepare the people for eventual aliyah to Israel, and they of course were involved in all of this. We had some very funny experiences with them. Of course, we worked all the time in close contact with them. There are many of them who became very important people later on. One of them I was connected with. We lived in Mexico for a time, and I was delighted when Shimon Amir, who became the first. He was the first secretary in the embassy, and then became ambassador to Turkey, and was the head of the Hebrew Academy here in Israel. He was there at the time as a member of the Jewish Brigade. There were many others who. There was Shammai Khan, who was in charge of sport and became an ambassador, and many of them. So that was the Jewish Brigade. They were Klal Yisrael in general, although there were some of them who also, especially the Shomer HaTzair types, where they concentrated mainly on their particular groups. But the Shlichim who came as party Shlichim. And
did they indeed break? Was there really a feeling of unity, and did they really break that?
No, I don't know how far they broke it. What happened was that all of the organizations at that time, the youth organizations, were
okay, you can continue.
And they came to their party. For example, there was Kurt Levine, who was the head of the group of Shlichim. He was a Mapainik. There was today Professor Mordechai Breuer,
yes,
who came from the Poel Agudat Israel. I can't remember too many names of the Shlichim at that time.
He was very close, obviously, with Baumgarten.
Yes, absolutely. And they came for that purpose, and it was the old Mafteach system. So there's no wonder that they were active in their parties. But the youth movements, as I say, were organized in Nocham, which was Noach Al-Tzim Muchad, and there was the attempt to keep them that way. And although there were people, I don't know if the name Avraham Melamed means anything to you. He was in the American zone. He was a DP from Lithuania, Masha's Madrich at one time. He fought against Nocham, and he felt that the parties should work with their own young people and keep them within the framework of the young people.
What about Mizrahi Shlichim?
Well, in Bergen-Belsen there wasn't a Mizrahi Shliach. We didn't have a Mizrahi. Not during the time that I was. Oh yes, there was. Of course there was. There was Menachem Ehrlich. And Menachem Ehrlich, that's right, of course. He was killed later in Latrun. What they did was to work in the schools. They organized evenings. There were these.
And what was your connection officially with them? Was there official connection?
No, I felt closer to Menachem. For example, we billeted together. He slept we both slept in the same room. But I was literally too busy to be involved. That was all their activity. Their activity was party activity.
I imagine that because it's a religious party, they were involved in religious religious affairs. Also, maybe it overlapped with your duties in terms of distribution of sidurim and.
No, we worked together. There was no problem. There was no problem on
at that point.
Nor with Mordechai Breuer. I mean, we're friends to this day. He lives just a couple of blocks from here. There was no. I think the religious organizations certainly, in view of what we saw there, and the need to rehabilitate people, to setting up of synagogues. At the beginning there was nothing. You saw people with a piece of string in lieu of a gartel, and the stories are legion of how people picked their lives up again and began to try and regain their Tzelem Elokim. I don't know whether you've come across this. One of the strongest things I've ever seen or ever read was quoted by Yafa Eliash in her book Chassidic Tales of the Holocaust. And apparently she quotes the Klausenberger Rebbe, who came to Germany at that time. He lost his wife and 10 children. And he was asked, what is the greatest miracle that has happened to him? And he said, the greatest miracle that ever happened to me was that I still believe in God. And you saw that many people fell by the wayside. More people obviously fell by the wayside than came back or retained their faith. But you saw what was happening immediately. They wanted a siddur, they wanted the chumash, they wanted tefillin, they didn't have tefillin, so they lined up. I remember I was distributing clothes. This is one of the things that I'll never forget personally. They were distributing clothes. We got clothes from the Joint, we got clothes from the Jewish Beach Unit. People sent parcels, and there was a big store. We divided things up: shirts, trousers, underwear, socks, and so on. People walked in. We obviously didn't have anything for everything that they wanted, but many still had the schmatters that they were wearing. We would ask them, what do you need most? And they would tell us, this one needed shoes, this one needed shirt, this one needed trousers. And I remember one young gaunt man coming in and looking around, and I said to him, what can we give you? Can I give you you need a pair of trousers? Do you need a pair of shoes? Yeah, he needed everything, a pair of shoes. So he said to me, do you speak Yiddish? He said, was reite mir a kop, gib mir a gemore. Things like that you never forget. That was what he needed, and that was his priority. But so people were trying to get to find their way back. In every block there was a little shtibel, a besmedrash. Friday night you heard the singing, women lighting candles. People were trying to rebuild their lives, and that was also part of our activity to try to help them. One of the things that I was roped into doing. And it was very difficult because it was very, very far. I was on Motzei Shabbos, just when Shabbos was terminating. After in the hospital, in the Glennews Hospital, I was asked to make Havdalah over the loudspeaker, and I did. And it's incredible. Today I sometimes meet people who come up to me and say, I remember when you made Havdalah over the microphone in the hospital. These are the things that they spoke. These things spoke to them. They reminded themselves of their home and so on. That was part of the work that we were engaged in at the time, apart from all of the other physical things that we.
If I'm trying to be specific, and I know that perhaps it's not the right type of question, but just to get an idea, what percentage of people would you say fit into the religious category, and then what other kind of categories religiously would you say you can't do that? That was
impossible. It would be dishonest of me. I can't tell. I don't know. It's impossible to say. Well, many people even today that you meet who at one time were great Talmidei Chachamim, were Hasidim, dropped everything at that time. There were other people who found their way back, and it's impossible. Somebody who will try and give you an answer is either he's making these things up, or he has some tendency to. It's impossible to say. Don't forget that most of the people who came from religious homes at that time. And
anyway, we'll go backwards a little bit. I'd like to hear about your arrival in Diepholz. That was your first.
My first assignment.
And what exactly did you come to, and what did you do there, and how long were you there? I know I'm asking a few, but I'd like to frame it, and then you can tell me what you did.
I was in Diepholz.
You arrived there in June?
I arrived in June. In fact, I arrived again very strange. There are strange coincidences. I could even pinpoint the exact date. It was Shivas of Tammuz that year. Why do I remember that? I flew over in one of these old Dakotas. I was sitting next to an officer, a major.
Please continue.
And when they brought around some refreshments, it was Shivas of Tammuz. I didn't take. So the first time he didn't notice or didn't comment. The third time he said to me, it's hot in here. They didn't have any air conditioning in the Dakotas at that time. He said, don't you want to have a drink? Don't you want to have a drink? And I said to him, I thought I had owed him some explanation. I told him it's Shivas B'Tammuz. And he said, oh, tell me about it. He said, I'm a Catholic, I'm a religious Catholic. I'd like to know, I'm interested. I told him. And at that time you didn't fly for 1 hour. I think it took us 3 hours, almost 3 hours to fly. And we became friendly. And he gave me his card. Months later, in fact, yes, I was in, to answer the question that you've asked, I was in Bergen-Belsen, I was in Diepholz from Shivas of the day following Shivas of Tammuz until Tisha B'Av. It's 3 weeks, but at that time the camp was dissolved and we took everybody over to Bergen-Belsen. The whole population, not the whole population, I'll explain in a moment, but those who were left in Diepholz were transferred to Bergen-Belsen. And but months later in Hamburg, a family came to see me in Hamburg. I was a Jewish liaison officer. I don't know if this explains some of that. Have you read
yes, of course, yeah. Right.
Okay. There was a big problem with the Joint who were against my appointment. But anyhow, I had this big flag, well, not of Israel, but what became the flag of Israel outside my door. It's a Jewish liaison officer, and people would come to see me with their problems. A woman came in, told me that her husband had been arrested for black market activity, and could I please help? It wasn't the first time, wasn't the last time, and it was very difficult. The British, certainly the Germans, used this pretext to continue to punish Jews, because they were left in charge of the prisons, and they were the police. But I knew that in a case like this I should go to the British authority. I went to the man who I was told was in charge of the prisons, and it turns out it was this officer that I'd met on the plane. And he was very pleased to meet again. I told him what had happened. He said, I've been hearing this all the time. He said, do something about it. It's very difficult to do something about it. They're not criminals. It's just the need to survive and the urge to survive. He said, yes, but it's getting out of hand. So, at the end of the day, he gave me a note to the German, to a German who was supposedly in charge of this activity. I had to go to the town hall. Came to see this man, whose name was given to me, and when I went in, he smiled, big, typical Nazi-looking, if there is such a thing, the idea we have of the typical Nazi, and he received me. He smiled. He said, "Listen, Sie bitte, in Germany although I speak German, I learned German, I did not speak German, I spoke English." And I said to him, sorry, I don't understand. So he said to one of his colleagues, sagen Sie dem verfluchten Engländer, soll sich hinsetzen. I sat down, I listened very carefully, and I gave him the note. He says, ja, sagen Sie dem, again, the verfluchten Engländer. I got I got the permission, the paper to get him released, and as I went out, I said to him, you're going to hear from me. And I went back, I first of all got this man out of chair, and I went back to my friend, told him the story. He was dismissed the next day. So that's just a sideline. That's a sideline, a footnote on the history of that time. So
you were in Diepholz 3 weeks, and what was the Jewish population?
There were several thousand. I can't remember.
Oh,
I could have
okay.
remembered.
That's okay.
Diepholz was in Diepholz. there were both Jews and Poles and other nationalities. And the Jews suffered greatly at the hands of the Poles throughout all that period. Come later, tell you about something that happened in Bergen-Belsen. And I had to help. Mainly at that time, I was also very new. I didn't really know what was going to happen.
Are we talking about one camp or various assembly centers?
There was one camp in Diepholz.
We're not talking even about a community. We're talking not even about people. Just one camp.
It was a camp which was outside the city.
Okay.
And as I told you, I met the very first Shabbat. I met this cousin of mine. And he would also, but he wasn't only there, he went to other camps too, but he knew people in Diepholz. That's why he came that Shabbat, that particular Friday, and that Shabbat. And what happened during that period was that in the middle of the night, the middle of one night, the lorries of the British Army appeared in the camp. Searchlights were put on. And British soldiers with guns, with their bayonets, were rounding up people, Jewish DPs, to send them off to Sweden. It was a time when Sweden allowed a number of people to...
not necessarily sick ones, we're talking about...
No. They didn't take only sick, I know the story, the sick people, but here they wanted to dissolve this camp apparently. And that must have been the reason. Whatever the reason, in the middle of the night, tried to picture Jewish DPs huddled in their rooms, faced by British soldiers with guns, with their bayonets fixed, telling them to get out, raus, just as they had heard in exactly the same terms that they'd heard some time ago, and being herded onto the bus, onto the lorries which took them away. People began to run in panic, to hide. They hid under beds. And the British wanted me to help them round them up. I told them to go to hell, and I did what I could to hide people. When I went with them, I said, "We've been to this room." And
did you know what they were doing? Did they explain it to you?
No, they said that there's the permission for them to go to Sweden. They don't understand why do they want to stay in Germany. But why they had to do it in that way? They could have done it in a very simple way, and I think many people would have wanted to take advantage of it. Masha was present at something that happened later. There was one particular lady she was really a lady who stood out from all of these people, and during the few days, there wasn't a very long period, a few days that I got to know her, I would bring her, sort of favoured her. It's a strange thing to say, but I would bring her perhaps more than I would bring other people. She lost her husband. She felt that she'd lost her husband, lost children, so. And when she hid, afterwards, I said, it was a highly intelligent lady, and I said to her, "Why did you hide it?" "Well, all right, they did it in a horrible way, but you could have gone, you would have been in, why do you have to stay in Germany? You could have been in Sweden." So she said that her husband had been taken away, and she hadn't seen him for years, but she still felt that he was alive, and if he were alive, he would come to Germany to look for her, and she didn't want to go away. What happened was that a few months later, as I was walking in Bergen-Belsen, I heard my name called, and I turned around, and there she was with her husband. Her husband had come back and had found her. There are many incidences of that time. But the fact is that is the way in which the...
So part of the population was actually moved to Sweden?
Part of the population moved to Sweden, and the rest were shortly afterwards taken to Bergen-Belsen, distributed.
And you were
And I led that convoy. It was a convoy that took them from Diepholz to...
and that was the end of Diepholz, including the non-Jewish population as well?
No, the non-Jewish population was still there.
Ah, so this was a
It was an attempt, we were fighting all the time to get Jews separated. To jump the gun again, during the time when I was recuperating from my illness, I stayed for some time in Faxted, in the farm. And near us, there was a very well-known political leader, and professor of economics in England, the London School of Economics, by the name of Harold Lasky. I don't know if the name means anything.
Lasky?
Lasky. And Harold Lasky was a completely secular Jew, married to a non-Jewish woman. His father had been the head of the Jewish community in Manchester. His brother was the head of the Jewish community, a very well-known lawyer, QC, but he was a politician, not a politician, he was an economist and very left-wing, and until the opening of the camps and what had happened, had been far removed from anything Jewish. It seemed that two things that seemed to have affected him. One, of course, the Holocaust and all its implications. The other thing was that he liked the idea of young Jews, men and women, on the farm. He used to come to visit us. We used to go every Shabbat to his home, who were workers, and it was not the image that he had always had of Jews, which was it was an anti-Semitic view of Jews, but he liked us, and I think we had an effect on him too. One Shabbat after, I think it was the first Shabbat that I came out of the hospital, and I stayed on the farm. We went to his home, and he asked me to say what was happening, to give some sort of report. The fellow of the farm were there with him, and I told what was happening, and he said to me, "What if you were somebody in power? What would your recommendation be? What would you try to do?" And I told him that one of the worst things that was happening was that Jews in Bergen-Belsen were being persecuted by the Poles, especially by the Poles, but there were Ukrainians, there were others. The Poles were literally conducting pogroms against them. I gave him incidences where synagogues were destroyed, makeshift synagogues, where Sifrei Torah were torn, where Sifrei Torah were urinated upon. And why should Jews have to go through such a thing? Why can't Bergen-Belsen become a Jewish camp? And the non-Jews, and they were, in any case, the Jews were the largest contingent in the camp. Why can't that become a specifically Jewish camp? And that was that. Shortly after, I had a letter from him. I've been trying to find it and I can't find it. A very short note. He said to me, "Dear Avraham, I discussed what we heard from you with Ernst Bevin, who was then the foreign minister, and I think that we will find a way of making Bergen-Belsen a Jewish camp." That's all I heard from him. And not long after, something else. You can never tell. I'm no great politician, I'm no great leader, but a thing like that. If you get somebody who is in power, I think we all need to learn from that. If somebody who is in power hears something that affects him, he is very often prepared to do things, and I think this was something very important. Jews then began to build their own form of life in Bergen-Belsen.
So you took the Deep Pulse people to Bergen-Belsen. That's when you started working in Bergen-Belsen.
And then I went to Hamburg.
Oh, then you went. Oh, you took them to Bergen-Belsen, and then you.
I was there for a few days, and then went off.
And what was your task in Hamburg, and what did you do there?
Well, my main task, I think most of what, or not quite a bit of it, you will be able to learn from this. I established myself with, I think his name was Colonel Brown, who was a very, very sympathetic man, who was in charge of all of the DP activity. There was a big hall, a big building called Curio House, which is still standing today. I saw it when I visited Hamburg much later. It was sort of a round building, and on each floor there were many rooms, and each room became a liaison office of a different nationality. Of course, there was no such thing as a Jewish nationality, but it was my task to persuade him to create a Jewish liaison office. And I told him that the Jews did not want to go to their Polish representative.
Did you work with anybody else there?
I beg your pardon?
Did you work with anyone else there?
Well, the Joint was there, and they fought against it. They felt somehow that this was against them. They felt that they were the people who felt that they represented the Jews. And here was some young man coming in and really usurping what their particular activity should be. Their work was relief work. Of course, much of my work was also relief work and directing people to the various agencies that would help them. There was a man there, I think his name is Rothberg, I'm not quite sure. And he, although personally we were on good terms, he, behind my back, he was always trying to persuade Colonel Brown that there was no need for a Jewish liaison officer.
So the liaison officer's job was to help. We're talking about people who were in the community already, setting up a Jewish community in Hamburg, and the DP. Both. And where were the DPs? They were in camps.
No, in Hamburg they were already. There were certain
assembly centers.
Certain centers, but they were already dispersed in the city. Now again, here, as you put your finger on it, the work there was twofold. There was an emerging leadership. There was a man by the name of Heinemann, who was a Mischling, his wife was non-Jewish, who was emerging as a leader. There was a man by the name of Dr. Loeffler, who later became a senator, who was emerging as a leader of the community. They were trying to reconstruct the community. Some of the institutions of the community, an old age home, which was led by somebody called Levy, if I'm not mistaken, was older people were being gathered to and were taken care of in this old age home, which also had some sort of a kosher facility. We helped with kosher food. We helped get kosher food.
When you say we, you had people who assisted you?
Well, I and other people who were, I mean, the Jewish Relief, the Chief Rabbi's Emergency Council.
Who else did you work with?
Through Schoenfeld's office. But we all cooperated at that time. The Jewish Gemeinde, the Yiddish Gemeinde, was almost opposite the Curio House.
So you basically were working against the joint?
I wasn't working against the joint.
Meaning the joint you had different
felt
goals.
that I was usurping their role. That what was I doing there?
It wasn't that you had opposing goals.
I beg your pardon?
It wasn't that you had opposing goals
Not
in terms of re-establishing the community.
I think it was a question of prestige, nothing else. That they felt that you know what
they were there. And
why did I suddenly come?
In terms of reconstructing the Jewish community, did you have any particular ideology about whether the Jews should be reconstructed at all, or whether they should, in terms of building up a community again?
No, certainly not. What I think all of us felt was that if there were Jews there, they should be given every facility to rebuild their lives. You didn't at that time think about anything else. You saw people who were in sorrows, and you felt that you needed to help them. And they wanted a shul, so fine. So you find a place and you give them all the facilities. They want to eat kashrut, so create something for them. There wasn't. Maybe there were people, and I think it would have been very wrong at that time, who felt that no, we mustn't do anything here, and get them all out to Israel or to Palestine at that time.
So we're talking about older population, meaning that I imagine
they were mostly older.
And there were no children?
Very, very few. Very, very few. There were very strange cases also of I remember the wife of the Bishop of Mecklenburg came to see me. I know, I can see it today. Very tall, handsome woman, dressed all in black with a huge black hat. And she said that somewhere at the back, somewhere in her past, there were Jews, and therefore she felt that she was entitled to help from the Jewish community, which was, of course, nonsense. But there were a lot of cases of black market that we had to deal with. I had an incredible, extraordinary story. Two, actually. A man came in, an elderly man, who gave me an exercise book, big exercise book, and told me that he had been in Theresienstadt almost from the very beginning, that he was the Schreiber in the camp, and that his job was to record the arrival of prisoners, of Jews, to record how many, where they came from, and the date. And he had a complete record of everyone who, every group of people who came. He gave me, this is, I think it's an important document. I gave it to a member of the Jewish agency called Adler Rudel. What he did with it, I don't know. That was one thing I think was very important. The other thing was a man came and said to me that before he left for camp, and he knew he was being taken away, he and a number of friends had removed as many Sifrei Torah that they could find, and manures and books, Sforim and so on, and had crated them and had hidden them in the cemetery, in the communal cemetery. And that he is an old man, he doesn't know how long he's going to live, but he feels that one should know about this. He told me, and I organized, I'm a Kohen, I couldn't go on the cemetery, but I organized people to dig up these crates, and we distributed.
And they were there.
They were there. And I'll show you something in a moment that's very interesting. I think very interesting. I was very active in the community itself. Unfortunately, I wasn't there too long because I took ill. Mm-hmm. And as I say, I was in hospital in Hanover. They came to see me. Leaders of the community came to see me before I left. And I was to be flown over to Liverpool, and they brought me a number of gifts from those crates. They brought me a menorah, a silver menorah, Polish menorah, which was stolen when we were in Mexico. Mm-hmm. They brought me a shofar, which my wife gave to Bnei Akiva in London. And they gave me a few other things. They gave me this, which was I gave this to Masha, whom I then met. This was the beginning of Elul. This is a siddur. They gave me the Mandelkorn concordance. This was Levi, who was in charge of the... I was called rabbi there for obvious reasons, and they gave me something else, another sefer, a medalish, which I got something. Anyhow, this is these things were actually in those crates that had been hidden in the Bitakvarot.
How would you characterize the different needs, for example, of the Germans who had come back to their communities and the DPs who happened to have made their way to Hamburg? The people from Hamburg, were they the German Jews in Hamburg? Were they originally people from Hamburg?
No, those who wanted to rebuild the communities were originally German Jews who had lived in Hamburg or nearby and wanted now to be among Jews. They were completely different elements. The Polish, let's say the Polish, the Eastern European Jews considered Hamburg as a transit camp. They were there for the time being. Therefore, if they could make a living, fine. If not, they would move on elsewhere. The Jews who came back wanted to rebuild the Jewish community of Hamburg. In a nutshell, that's the difference between the attitudes of the two elements who came. They didn't mix very much at the beginning. Most of the German Jews at that time were Mischlinge. And in fact, many of them had not been in camps at all. Somehow or other they had survived in Hamburg, although there were some who came back. At that time the community was mainly of DPs. And apart from the work in Hamburg itself, we always, I together with other people of the community, we went around looking for Jews. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we found, I think I even write about that, we found near Kiel, we found a camp, a women's camp who had not been although it was quite late already, hadn't been found before. Nobody knew that they were there. And then, of course, we provided for them. We brought them food. We brought them clothing, and we arranged that they should come out. A lot of the work, as I talk to you, I begin to remember other things. A lot of our work was to get Jews out of prison. Many of them
for the
out
black
of the
market?
The male, yes. Most of them were in prison for black market, and somehow we managed to get them.
And you as a rabbi had that kind of clout that you were able to.
I didn't really. I had. There was
but it helped you in terms of getting them out, as it did before?
It helped in the sense that the German officers who were in charge of the prisons were somehow intimidated by my uniform. I had with me, there was a man, I've forgotten his second name, his name was Harry. He was a driver with the Jewish Relief Unit from England, very simple guy, but a real, how should I say, he was a real cockney, but a very aggressive type. And we would literally go from one place to another, one prison to another, and he would begin to shout at the German officers and so on, and make as if he's got a list in his hand, and we've come to take any Jewish prisoners that you've had. They simply gave up the prisoners without it. Don't forget, it was the very first days. There wasn't any real order. There wasn't any real control. With bluff, you could get away with anything. I remember this. He would. I remember once we were traveling along a road near a place called Lüneburg, and we had a flat tire, and he stopped the German car, and the man didn't have a spare tire. We didn't have a spare tire, he didn't have a spare tire. He took off one of his wheels, took off the tire, and gave him a piece of paper, and I don't want to tell you what he wrote on that piece of paper. And the Germans felt that, that this was a receipt of what, that you could get away with murder for good things.
What kind of community basis was it with the German Jews who had their wives generally were half Jews, or the wives were not Jewish? I mean, what kind of basis for a Jewish community? What were their needs, for example, religious needs?
I don't really think they cared for any religious needs. What they needed was to get together. They wanted to get together. The ones that I met at that time were Reform Jews. They didn't really care about a Jewish religious life in the sense that we understand it today. They because of the general animosity of the population around them, they felt that there was safety in being together, and Jews congregate together with other Jews. They looked for other Jews, and that's what they came there for. They had a kaffeeklatsch, they would play cards there. It was a social. They had a form of a synagogue. It was the Polish Jews, the East European Jews, who began to have a minyan in the sense that we understand it there. You must also. I wasn't there very long. I was there literally at the very, very beginning when people were beginning to come back, and I just saw the beginnings. I know, for example, that Senator Dr. Loeffler, who was also married to a non-Jewish woman, and who was not known. He was a senator before the war, or before Hitler came to power, or at least a very important figure. And he was coming to the forefront. And later only I heard that he literally became the leader of the community. But he was already in the government, in the new government of Hamburg that was being formed. So people felt that they could go to him and ask for help. You needed help, you needed everything. People couldn't make with nothing. So any help that could be given to them was
Were the other rabbis that Baumgarten and Munk, did they visit these communities as well?
No. Baumgarten was mainly stationed in Bergen-Belsen. Munk would come if there was a problem, or if we wanted to, if there was a chasna in Blankenese, in Hamburg or wherever. He was the Masada Kedushin.
Did you visit Blankenese by any chance?
I was in Blankenese. Why?
No, because we interviewed Ruma Weitzman, who was the head of the children's home there.
Oh, I visited the children, and in fact, I was there when Rabbi Munk performed the wedding there.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Do you remember her? Are you familiar? No. She was very young.
I don't remember.
Anyway, can we now jump to Bergen-Belsen? You had, do you still have enough
Okay.
Okay, whenever you get tired, we can stop. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay.
You got ill and then you went back to England and you came back to Bergen-Belsen. That was.
I came back. It must have been just a minute. It was after Sukkot. It must have been the beginning of November. I had spent some time in Bergen-Belsen after Tisha B'Av also, but very short visits. And then when I came back...
We're talking already 1946.
Sorry?
1946.
No, this is still 1945.
45. Okay.
This is 45. And when I came back, I got an office in the building of the community. It was block H5. That's where the community was. Well, all the communal offices were situated.
Such as another example of a communal office.
The community newspaper, education, the office of the school offices, and so on. That's where Yossel Rosensaft sat. You must have heard that name many times. And Masha my wife worked there.
Is that where you met?
No, we met, we saw more of each other there, but we met before because she was teaching in a school and I used to visit the school and give classes. I gave one class in the school on Mamare Chazal, and that's where I think
in Bergen-Belsen.
In Bergen-Belsen. She was active in the B'chad, she was near Kiva back home, and so she became.
So that's where you had the connection.
That was the connection. So she sat there in the rabbinate. The rabbinate had an office. There was a rabbinate, a Betin, and she used to type the ksubas. There was no printing, so she did the typing of the ksubas. There was a newspaper that was there, and that was the main headquarters. And that's where people would come to me with all sorts of problems that they needed help on.
Did you have a staff? Did you work with anyone else?
I had a staff. I had a secretary. Unfortunately, her name was Magda. She committed suicide. She was a hunger girl, always in depression. And one day I came and she wasn't there, and I said, "Where's Magda?" And I told her she's committed suicide. I had help from other people, but it wasn't an office that I needed to write in. Mainly, the most, how should I put it? Most of the written work I did myself. I typed with mistakes and so on. I did that on my own.
Did you work with the Jewish relief unit?
Oh yes, very closely, very closely, and they called on me for things that they needed.
So how did you divide the functions, for example? It was all.
There was no particular.
You worked together, and you kind of.
We worked together, and in fact, I lived then in their billet. We organized.
Who did you live with?
With the Jewish relief unit. People names. Sarah Epstein,
okay.
Judy Lunzer, today lawyer, Hinde Perlman, who passed away. You know who that. The names. She was Moshe Perlman's sister. If I saw the names, I would.
No, I'm just trying to place you in terms of.
I was with that. There was a Gladys Bernhardt, Bertha Weingreen. With that, that was the group. And I was involved in many things that can be spoken about and many things that cannot be spoken about. I was called out many times in the middle of the night to all sorts of activities. In the camp, I was active with the youth movement, especially. It's very with the school. It's very difficult to pinpoint. There was a big school in Bergen-Belsen. Photos of the school.
And you taught.
I gave classes. There, and as I say, I visited the sick in the hospital. I used to go out to other hospitals. There was a hospital near the Dutch border. Was it Bedburg? I just remember there was a place that we passed always called Xanten, and I remember the name because there was a famous pogrom at the infamous pogrom at one time, and I saw the name Xanten and it registered with me. We would visit it. Don't forget that in these hospitals there were not only Jews, there were others too. We visited the Jewish patients. It's very difficult. I try sometimes to think exactly of what was done. It's impossible. You know, a teacher teaches, a rabbi gives rulings or conducts services. It was a very, very wide range of things that kept us busy all the time.
How was your relationship with Rosensaft and the Central Committee? Did they cooperate with?
They cooperated. They cooperated with me. Anything that I needed, they used me. Also, I'll tell you something that I was used for especially. The Anglo-American Commission came to Bergen-Belsen. I was there. Yossel Rosensaft asked me to be their interpreter. And I don't know whether you know the form that their questioning took.
In terms of immigration.
There was first a session with them, and then I accompanied them, and they didn't want anybody else but myself, because they felt that they would perhaps influence those who were interviewed. They would stop people at random and ask, if you had a choice of where you wished to be sent, where would you wish to be sent? The second question was, then they asked only two questions. Well, sometimes there was small talk, but this is what they really wanted to know. If you were not allowed to go to that country, where would you want to go? And it was very strange. Most people, whether they really wanted to or they didn't, would answer Palestine, the first question, and then give wherever it was that they would want to go, because they had their family, to Canada, Australia, or whatever. Some people that we knew were members of the youth organizations who were preparing for Aliyah Bet would answer the first question as they want to go to America. Later we would ask them, "Are you crazy?" I said, "Yeah, you know, it would be suspicious if everybody said Palestine."
First time I've heard that one.
So therefore we said this. But one of the most memorable, that's the word, replies was given.
Okay.
There was a big cinema in Bergen-Belsen, which was there was a theatre, a Jewish theatre performed there. They had films there. It was a central meeting place. The meetings for the elections to the Zionist Congress took place there, and it was a central spot in the camp. And the commission stood there and waited for people to pass and would ask them. And I remember a young boy, I can't remember exactly how old he was, very thin young boy, perhaps 12, maybe older, maybe younger, I don't know. They stopped him and they said to him, I asked me to ask him, where would you want to go? And he said, he looked at me strangely, he said, what sort of a question is it? I want to go to Palestine. So I said, well, the second question that they're asking is, if you can't go to Palestine, where would you want to be sent? He said, if I can't go to Palestine, send me back to Auschwitz. I remember Crossman who was there, he was completely taken aback by that. But that's also something that Yossel Rosensaft asked me to be involved in. He would ask me sometimes to visit Hanover or Celle or other places in the British zone on various missions that he had in mind. And I would willingly...
What was your impression personally of him?
Sorry?
What was your personal impression of him? Okay, fine. Okay. You worked in there. Now, towards let's say, after you were there about, it was already a year after the war, what did the nature of the work change after that?
The nature of the work changed in the sense that we were all... What happened later was that nature was taking its course, young people were meeting and were planning to get married, and then we were all involved in it. It seems silly today and strange to think that this was something that we were involved in, but it was very necessary at that time. We were involved in providing clothes for the Chosenkale. We were involved in providing a hall for them, in providing and seeing that the Rov would be there, in all of the petty little things that were...
Okay, in terms of how the nature of the work changed.
Also, it became more formalized. People wanted to establish a home, so to speak, even in the circumstances in Bergen-Belsen. And as you probably know, there were 3, 4 people usually in a room. When a couple decided to get married, then they were given the room, and the people then left the room and went to other places. Things of that nature, but life was becoming a little more organized, and we played along with that. It wasn't the immediate pair of shoes and the trousers and food, but something much more organized. We needed to deal with a bris, so we needed to with a pidgin aben, or I was involved in even with a choir. We organized a choir. We organized concerts, and we participated in concerts. It became life became more normal, and we went along with this.
Did you officiate at any weddings?
I'm not. I didn't give Choppah v'Kiddushin. What I did was usually Rabbi Nunk or one of the other rabbis would ask me to do the Sheva Brachos, which I did. But that wasn't my...
I imagine you were also involved in the
I done Rosh Hashanah and Kippur.
I see.
In Shul, still do, but anyhow.
I imagine you were probably involved in the location of relatives, finding...
That was, of course, a major...
And that continued throughout the period?
Till the very end. But something else that obviously I've forgotten to mention, that was we were postmen at the beginning. There was no way in which a DP could send letters. And so what they did was to give us letters, and we would send them off in our own way, with our own name and military government stamp, the seal, and the replies would come back to us, and then we would distribute the letters to the people they were addressed to. What you found, for example, there was an office where each day almost lists were posted. I'm sure this is not only the British Times, this was everywhere. And people would come in and would look. Sometimes you would hear a scream, and sometimes you would hear a shout of joy, and that was all part of it.
Okay, I think we'll stop here.
All right.
Okay.